Welcome to the Automatic Patient Podcast, where we help your dental practice create a kick-ass recurring revenue model. Here are your hosts, Mr. Jordan and Justin Comstock. This podcast is powered by BoomCloud. Create, manage, and grow your dental membership program. Schedule a demo on BoomCloud.com.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another exciting episode of the Automatic Patient Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts today, Jordan Comstock, the founder and CEO of BoomCloud. With me, I got my director of marketing, Bentley Folkman. What is up, Bentley? How are you doing, man?
I am great. I just, full disclosure, little personal thing this week. I officially get to go through my midlife crisis.
Yes, you do.
I don't know when this will be published, but tomorrow is my 40th birthday, and nice. I've made it this far with most of my hair, and only a little bit of it is gray. So I'm excited about that.
Nice, man. And you're gonna go pick up a new guitar, which is
official midlife crisis starting. Haven't owned a guitar since I was 17, so we're gonna get that off the ground again. So
you're gonna start a band?
Yeah, we're gonna call it
a BoomCloud band.
A BoomCloud band.
Yeah. So I got a couple. We're all guitar players here at BoomCloud. So this is one of our guitars. It's custom painted with the AC/DC album.
That is pretty cool. That's nice.
So Bentley's gonna get one of these.
Bentley's
gonna shred on one of these.
I don't know if I'll be at the shred level for quite some time, but we'll definitely look good doing it, whatever it is.
All right, today we got a guest. His name is Tom Brown from Dental SOP. Tom, I've been following you for years. I always bump into you at conferences and always enjoy our conversations. So I'm excited to have you on the show today. For the audience that they don't know who you are, why don't you explain who you are and how you got into dentistry?
Fantastic. So first of all, it was great seeing you guys at this last weekend at the Dental Success Summit. Actually ended up staying an extra day, and that's why I'm glowing a little bit in red, because that's the first time I've seen the sun in a while, because I'm from Chicago. So we get out there, it's 84, and you spend a few hours in the pool.
Yeah.
This is what happens.
Hey, you look great, man.
Yes, I could probably turn off all the lights and you could still see me.
Still see you bright, yeah.
So for those who don't know me, I've spent about the last dozen years in dentistry, and it's been exciting because I came out of a more, let's say, traditional industries in hydraulics and pneumatics and office supplies and equipment, and something happens new there every half century, right?
Sure.
Come into the technology field, and this is a lot of fun because something new is happening literally every day. And so you're really on the cutting edge of everything that's happening. You don't have to go through all kinds of iterations to jump on board. And that's what I found most exciting about being in the dental space, because I've always been in the dental space on the technology side. So that's been pretty exciting. From a personal standpoint of why I like it so much is you're dealing with entrepreneurs every day, whether they're the dental practice owners or they're the third-party applications that are helping dental practices either grow, become more efficient. And that's really where my passion lies. It's helping businesses, whether they're practices or different organizations, find some way to grow. And in a lot of cases, what that comes down to is a couple of things. It comes down to simplifying your message. So many people, when they're out there, they've got such a great idea and such a great product that they don't know how to message it correctly. Sure. And I've had a lot of experience with that. Some would say I grew up with that because I was number 8 out of 10 kids. And so if you didn't message it correctly, you just didn't eat, right?
Yeah.
So I started in a website company, was there for a couple of years. Went on to one of the ones probably I'm most known for is LocalMed. Are you guys familiar with that?
Oh yeah.
I'm learning.
This was actually a classic example of what I'm talking about. LocalMed could not have been a better product at a better time, because nobody had real-time online scheduling in the dental community. Everything was like an email request system.
Yep.
And in 4.5 years and spending millions of dollars, they put 30 providers on the platform, 30, because it wasn't messaged correctly. I remember on my second day getting a demo from the founder and owner, and it was an hour and 5 minutes long.
Oh, wow. Ooh.
Nothing seems simple that you're talking about for an hour and 5 minutes.
No.
So we turned that into a 6-minute demo. And one of the key things was, obviously it's a lot simpler if you can learn it in 6 minutes, but finding that connection point with your audience and something that they can relate to. And I think one of the important messages right at the beginning for local med and why it kind of took off was comparing it to a shopping cart. I'd go around the country, and Jordan, you may have even heard this as I was
Yep.
talking to different rooms full of doctors.
Yeah.
I'd ask everybody to raise their hand if they'd ever bought anything online. And of course, everybody raised their hand. And then I'd say, okay, well, let me ask you this. Think about what you're purchasing right now. And would you purchase that same product or service at the same time with the same vendor if the shopping cart didn't exist? And you had to email them first, and then they weren't going to email you back. They were going to call you the next day while you were at work and ask you if you wanted to buy that. Guess how many people held their hands up, guys?
Yeah. Probably all of them.
Nobody.
Or nobody, yeah.
Nobody's buying anything.
No,
like
yeah,
that,
nobody.
right?
Yeah.
I meant all of them raise their hand that they want the convenience of, yeah.
Yes. So literally that turnaround was really quick because I could just say, by the way, that's what all of you are doing with all of your patients. You don't have a shopping cart. You get them to come to your website, you get them to come to your Facebook page. They want to book an appointment. There's no shopping cart. So they're not doing it. And so that opening, which was like 30 seconds or a minute, really led to people understanding what it was and what it would be for their practice. And of course, it was really successful over the next 3 years. We had over 9,000 people on it. And in the first 4.5, they only had 30, right? Because it was a phenomenal product. It's not gonna work unless it's a product that's gonna make a difference. And it really
Sure.
helped patients connect with their doctors. And that's kind of the key to that. And then finding those different avenues to put that message out there. And sometimes that message has to be tweaked a little bit. And the same thing is true for the doctors, the owners of the practices. What is your niche? How do you put yourself out into the community? And what's going to draw that attention? And to me, more time needs to be spent on the little things in that, because it's just the nuances that tell those stories rather than the grandiose marketing plans. And you need those, but you need that message that's gonna connect with it. The other piece of that is making sure all of the customer facing team members are telling the same story. They can tell a different part of that story, but it's got to be the team story. So that's what I've focused on in dental from a technology standpoint. I'm pretty excited about all of those things. I think you guys know that I've done that for a number of companies. And so I decided just in the last year that I'm not going to go at least right now, I'm not going to go and just pick one company out and work for it. I'm going to work with a few companies, not a lot, because it takes a lot of time and creativity to think of those messages. But I'm going to help people in more of a consulting role, business advisor role. And that's where I saw you at the DSS and why I'm here representing my dental SOP. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. So many practices and practice owners need help finding their niche in dentistry and understanding how to message it to, potential patients. I think that's such a needed part of any practice. So I love that you're passionate about that. And I know I've spent a lot of time with you talking for hours at events on this specific topic, and it's definitely one that always has fascinated me when talking to you. So love it.
Well, messaging is everything.
It really is.
Building a connection with people requires you to have that emotional connection, and you can't do that unless your message is consistent as a company and is aligned with the what you offer and the needs of the people you're talking to. And so building that into a standard process, not everybody thinks of those needs the same way, like you said, and I like to think of it as like a John Hughes. I always get his name wrong, but the 80s comedy movie writer, Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
There's always those.
Fan.
Yeah, I love those movies, right? And there's always in those movies a high school kid who's trying to find his way and trying to be popular. And whenever there's a party situation or something like that in those movies, they always go about it the wrong way. They're always like, hey, if I can do this over the top thing, I will reach my audience, right? And in marketing, it's a lot more focused, and what they learn throughout those movies every time is it's not about that. It's about identifying who I am, who I want to be friends with, identify that one person at the party, and building a message that resonates perfectly with them and connect with them. And in marketing, you don't get that in a face-to-face interaction. And you get that through messaging. And then the nice thing about marketing too is that now I have a megaphone, so I can have that one-to-one conversation. I can talk real loud, and then people that like that conversation can come listen in, and now I've got a group of friends. But it has to be focused on that one-to-one message. And I like the idea of operationalizing that so that your team knows what that message should be, so they can find their own flavor of how to communicate it.
Well, and the first step in doing that is knowing yourself, or knowing your practice, or knowing your business, because the message that you want to put out there has to be authentically yourself. It's got to be your business, because that's what you're going to be passionate about. People will identify the passion that you're talking about that with, because it just resonates with you. It's not something you're trying to be. It's just who you are. And that's where you're going to make that genuine connection. And the simpler you can do that from a business perspective to make people understand what you're doing, then they can get into some more of the detail. But finding that nuanced message that connects with a majority of the people so they can relate to it. And a lot of times it's really helpful to relate it from a business perspective. It's helpful to relate what you're talking about to something in your personal life, like the shopping cart, because everybody knows what that is. And it's like, wow, I never thought about that with regard to my business, that I have to have a shopping cart outside of my dental practice, right? But it seems so obvious after people were doing it that,
Sure.
wow, this was sometimes the most genius things are the simplest things.
Yeah.
And it's just putting those things together. And it starts with knowing yourself, knowing the problem you're going to solve or the opportunity you're going to create. And now how do you simplify that message? Don't talk about it for an hour and a half.
Yeah. I love that.
That's a long time.
I always tell, whenever we have like an intern or right out of school, or I mentor someone in marketing or business, I always tell them, they always ask, what should I study? What should I know? What should I focus on? And my response is always, focus on the common sense elements of business, of marketing. Marketing is just common sense with different vocabulary. And once you understand that, that's what all running a business is, all marketing communications is just stuff that you think about all day, every day, but with different vocabulary and doing it from somebody else's perspective. And it does start with who you are, and being honest and open and objective of who you are not. And then building that message as simply as possible around it. But you're right. People overcomplicate it because they see so much. There's, first of all, so much noise out there, and so much time you're competing with. And we've seen marketing for decades now, everything from the Mad Men of the 50s and 60s to what we see now on social media and TikTok. And it has just gotten loud and obnoxious and noisy. But at the end of the day, what resonates is those clean, simple messages.
Yeah. Those authentic messages.
Yep.
So, Tom, speaking of clean, simple messages, how would you explain what dental SOP is and why it may benefit some practices?
Well, let me take the next hour and a half to share this with you.
Nice.
No, so, and really the first step for all of us, when you're going to start working with a company, for a company, whatever, you really have to do your due diligence and ask yourself the question, is what they're doing solving a problem or creating an opportunity? Are you going to be proud that an organization, in this case a dental practice, that they're going to purchase what you're providing? And you have to be excited about that, because if you're not, you should not do that.
Yeah.
I'm sure that you guys have had a number of people reach out to you like I have, and they've got these great ideas, but in the end, it's not something that's going to resonate with people. It's not really solving a problem. It's almost like a personal thing that they're doing that maybe worked in this certain situation. So you really have to look at that and say, is this something that's going to work? And so when I think of, like, another great example is local med. I mean, now very few practices don't have some real time, something that does real time online scheduling, because
Sure.
it's a must have right now. And to think that nobody was using it 8 years ago is kind of stunning. That's one of the reasons why I started to work with Laura Johnston, who's the founder of My Dental SOP. She called me up, it was back in October, and said, "Hey, Tom, can I just talk to you about this?" Yeah, great. We're friends. We talked for about an hour, hour and a half, and I was excited by it. I was like, wow, this really doesn't exist. I don't
Sure.
know of it existing somewhere. I'm sure people do it in different ways, but there are so many practices out there that don't have standard operating procedures, or they have them in a multitude of different places, on a bookshelf gathering dust, or they've got it in a Google Drive, they've got it in, this format, or they've got some in an email. And in most cases, it's in all of those places. So, like the shopping cart. I just at the DSS, I was asking doctors, I'll ask you guys this. Have you Googled anything in the last 24 to 48 hours?
Yes.
24 to 48 minutes, probably. Yeah.
That's probably
Exactly.
more accurate. Yeah.
Everybody says yes. And why do we do that? Because it's simple. If you're not 100% sure you know something, just type it into Google. Boom, you got your answer right there. Well, My Dental SOP is the Google for dental practices. Everything that they use to run their practice, all of their standard operating procedures for all their roles, can be digitized within this platform, and now they're instantly accessible. So think of the power of that for just a second, right? So during the day-to-day operations, somebody's sick, somebody else has to do somebody else's job. They don't do it all the time, right? So now they have to figure out how to do it. First of all, they don't know where to go to find the operating procedures, because they're in multiple different places. Waste of time, frustration, just all of that stuff that kind of makes a dental practice kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
Laura Johnson's got a lot of great stories because she's been a dental consultant for years. So when she would go into a practice, she would see all these SOPs in different places and whatnot, and then come in with a whole training regimen and all of her stuff that would be in one place, right? But not
Yeah.
everything in the practice was. And she saw that even after training people on it, she'd get a call back 3 months later, and somebody would say, "Hey, so and so just left. Can you come back in and train them?" And it's
Mm.
like, okay, but you really shouldn't have to do that, because you have the information, you own it now. But that was happening. And I guarantee you, your listeners, they know what this is like. Now, I will
Yeah.
say this: the doctors may not know, because they're not as involved as like the office managers and the front desk in most cases, but this is happening every single time somebody's gone. Somebody has to look something up. Now, the better part of this is kind of a surprise, is if they know they don't know how to do something, because then they will search out and try to find out how to do it. It's when they think they know how to do it that can be the bigger problem, because then they're
Sure.
just
Yeah.
winging it, right?
Yeah.
And now that's when errors come up and other things happen. Think of the power of just being able to type in insurance verification, and instantly you're looking at a
Step.
step-by-step process.
Yeah. Yeah. We use
So
something very similar here at BoomCloud, where our team members can, log in and
Yeah,
find a process if they don't know what it is or need a refresher because maybe they haven't done it in a while. Yeah, I'm a huge believer in this type of system in the practice. Bentley.
can I ask a question on this? Because
sure.
I've written a lot of standard operating procedures, and what I found is that how you write them is sometimes more important than even how. I mean, obviously they need to be able to find them, and I love the Google model of being able to search and ask questions and pull information directly. But do you help practices write those effectively? Because I think I've run into that problem a lot, where like all the knowledge is up here, but when I start to put it on paper, it doesn't translate the same way, and my team gets more confused by how I wrote it than have their questions answered. So do you have a way of coaching and helping them through that process?
The short answer is yes, because we have partners that they can go to that That's their job. They write SOPs. When Laura first came to me back in October, we had a couple of conversations before she asked me to be a partner and her business advisor on this. We talked about that because she has a lot of great content that she's built over 10, 15 years in dentistry, right?
Mhm.
So this is all of her content is already loaded into my dental SOP. But I
Oh, that's
told her, I
cool.
said, that's great. You have great content, right? But you all three of us know how many people have content and how many people like to do things differently, right?
Sure. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
said, what makes this special, no offense, but then I offended her, was, was it's not your content. Yes, it's great, but it's the platform that you've created that makes everything instantly
Yeah.
accessible. When we go to market, this can't be about the content. Now the content's all there. So
It's a good
hey,
starting point for maybe a practice, but then they can
absolutely.
customize it.
This is a no-brainer for like a new practice or
Mhm.
somebody that's getting like they're looking and saying, hey, we need to write these SOPs, which by the way was another question we asked at the DSS to a doctor. And we probably talked to 50 doctors there over the weekend, and every
Mhm.
single one had some variation of we're working on that, or we've got them like 20% done, or this or that.
Yeah.
Hey, all of this is already preloaded in there. But the key thing is this: it is infinitely customizable. As a matter of fact, I'll share with you that right now I know there's over a dozen different dental consultants now that are using my dental SOP and they're white labeling it because they're putting their own content in it, not using Laura's. Because I told Laura, if you want to get this out and it's based on your content, it's going to be a slow go because then everybody's going to have to agree with how you do everything.
Yeah.
That's not part of, I mean, it's part of it, but you can take what you want or take it out, put your
Modify.
own stuff
Yeah.
in it. We're not telling you how to run your practice. We're telling you to run it more efficiently using my dental SOP to make
Yeah.
sure everybody has access to that. But the consultants see it as such a great tool that because they've had the same thing that Laura's had as a consultant is people
Sure.
don't have access to it after they leave. This makes it not only more accessible, but now everybody's using it every day. I'll go back to, hey, you guys have Googled stuff, in the last 24, 48 minutes, right? That's how this
Yeah.
can be used. And it'll be used by the people within the dental practice. Now, that's the existing group of people. But I also asked dentists, now we took a little bit of survey every time we did it. We didn't ask them to take a survey, we just asked them a few questions.
Sure.
How many of you hired somebody in the last year? Everybody had. We didn't talk to anybody that hadn't hired somebody. Do you expect to hire somebody? They were laughing. They were like, well, yeah, of course. I mean, turnover, staffing, all this is like the hot button issue right now in dental since the pandemic, getting people to stay, right? And so 56, it's a stat, I think it's 56, it's less than 60% or almost 60% of the people that leave a dental practice when the first year of being at that dental practice, just under 60% of them point to their onboarding way at the beginning, and they didn't have the tools to do their job well. Well, obviously, if they have access to this, they're going to be able to do their job well because that tool is going to tell them how to do it. But think about this from an onboarding perspective, right? How much time do the existing staff members spend with those new people? Because they're shadowing them all the time, right?
Yeah.
And then they have to ask questions. Where is the standard operating procedure? You go through that scramble again of what happens. And again, if they don't know, they find out. But now you've got people at the practice who don't know how to do insurance verification, telling people how to do it. And now you've got issues, right?
It's like the
So
game of
80,
telephone if they don't use a
that's
SOP, right?
exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So think about this 80 to 90% of the training that can be done for onboarding can be self taught. Not only do they have the material, the modules, and everything set up and designed by role, but when they go through it, they can take a test at the end of it. Whoever their supervisor is now can actually look at their progress as they're going, reach in and help at different times if they need to, but all the time that they're saving. And then once somebody learns, wow, once they got out of the orientation, you guys know this, that now those people know everything 100% and they're perfect, right? No, that's
No.
not going to happen. So having access to the tool to make that happen is what's going to make the difference there. So
Sure.
that's another huge component of that. So
I
it's
love that.
yeah, it's making a difference with people when they're starting. But then what we started doing, because some of our consultants started doing this, so we're not going to take credit for it, but we definitely will copycat them.
Yeah,
And that
highlight
is,
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
hey, when you first get on board with my dental SOP, which again takes only about 24, 48 hours. And by the way, the dental practice can send us whatever SOPs they have in whatever format. It can be on paper, it can be on a drive, it can be anywhere, and we'll digitize that and put
Mm,
it into my dental SOP into those modules so it's usable. And we can do that in 24 to 48 hours so they can be up and running. Well, one of the things that the consultants started doing was, hey, as soon as you get on this, we've got this information, give the tests, the pre-tests to everybody at your practice based on what their role is. Now you've got a knowledge
mm,
gap assessment instantly. You don't want to make them
interesting.
go, you don't want to make them go through all the material, of everything if they already know it. But if they do poorly on the test, now they get to go back and actually read the material, go through the content, and then take the
Relearn it.
test again. So
That's cool.
it's really kind of cool.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love also the reapplication of skills, right? Because like you pointed at, I can't tell you how many times that you onboard someone and you get them best practice. This is how we do things here. And then you go back 2 months later and you're like, what are you doing? And it
Yes.
isn't their fault. They're hardworking, but best practice skills drift over time if not reinforced, right? So by having access to your guys' modules all the time, they can continually reinforce that. But then also they have that I love the pretest idea, because then
Yeah.
as a manager, your biggest problem is how and where can I help? And jump in right away and say, oh, this is where my teams is struggling, and I can do that without having to sit there and babysitting and micromanage them. It makes me look like a good boss because I'm providing the best value.
Yes.
And it also makes it easy for me to do it without having to devote a whole lot of time to it. I love that concept.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think one of the, I think I don't know if it was the
Mm,
ADA or somebody else came out that it cost like between ten and $15,000 in costs, like from everybody having to work with them and time lost and everything just to bring somebody up to speed.
Yeah.
That's a lot of
wow.
money, and it
Yeah.
hits the bottom line. Now you can have a less expensive application, and now you're actually training people regularly. Like you said, hey, maybe you have a quarterly review, but everybody's learning the same stuff. And because it's so easy to update the information, it's actually, now obviously you have to have the administrative access to it, but it's like updating a Word document. So cut and paste things out, put it back in, hit a couple of buttons, you got a new test there. It's really that simple. And that's what people are excited about. Now, what's really going to happen is down the road, these nobody likes to lose staff. And again, this is a big, big topic right now, because when a new person comes in, it's kind of a scramble, right? Because they're behind somebody. So now they come in, they've got to catch up. People are trying to teach them. They don't feel like they fit in as well because they're not providing the service as an employee like they want to, because they want to be good at their jobs. They don't want to not know how to do things. And then you get people that you're kind of embarrassed to ask questions. So think about that. Sometimes you're overwhelmed with things, especially in the first, few weeks, couple of months. You don't want to go back to that same person and say, hey, can you help me with the payment process again, right? Because now you feel
Hmm.
stupid. Now you're judging, should I ask that question? And now 9 months from now, you can't ask that question. So now I just feel stupid, and now I'm going to start looking for a new job. And guess what? This is a bad practice. I don't like it. They didn't train me well enough. The onboarding was
Yeah.
terrible, and all of a sudden, then they're out. But you've wasted as a practice owner $10,000 to $15,000 getting them up to speed. And now when the next person comes in, everyone's overjoyed to do the same thing again, right? Not. So
Yeah.
take that off the table. Get them onboarded consistently and as quickly as possible, save a lot of time from everybody else at the practice. And then that's the tool that they can use throughout the time they're there. Think about how that's going to impact production. You're not going to be dealing with errors all the time. They're definitely going to be reduced because people know what they're supposed to do. And really, at this point, there's no excuse. It'd be like, if I don't know how to spell a word, I just Google it, right? I'm a pretty
Yeah.
good speller. So I'll just, sometimes I would wing it if I didn't have Google. but now I'm going to
Sure.
make sure of that. That's what's going to start happening at these practices. And, you know, we were just at this conference, DSS. We took some of the content right off of Mark's opening statements.
Yeah.
And this is what we should do at the conferences. How many people come back and train or distribute that information in an effective way with the rest of the practice? You
Yeah.
ask people, it doesn't happen. You can have SOP open right while you're at the conference, whether it's CE, business, whatever, taking notes, putting it into a module. You can assign it to the people at the practice while you're there. So they're actually getting this information. So when you come back, you can be excited with people about these new learnings and implement it
Yeah.
right away.
Yeah,
So
that's
I love that.
Yeah, so do I. That's a huge problem in dentistry where a practice owner goes to a conference like Dental Success Summit, gets all this excitement, learns all these new things, and then comes back and he or she's the only one excited, and nobody understands like the full picture. So you're saying that practice owners can be documenting what they're learning and what they want to implement, create a process or a system
absolutely
during the conference, and then they go and train it when they get back. That's cool.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and honestly, anybody from the practice that goes to a conference, that really should be their SOP, because
Yeah.
when you go to the conference, yeah, everybody loves going to the conferences. I do. I have fun, but you're there for a business reason.
Yep.
And now it's much easier to bring that value home rather than just go and maybe, you know, you talk about it a week later at a meeting, because we all know you don't, if you don't utilize what you've learned in 24 to 72 hours, I think it's a 72 hours, you lose 90% of it. It's a shockingly high number. Now you're doing it instantly. In 24 hours, you lose 50% of it. Taking those notes, right there for you, it's really making a difference.
I love
Yeah.
that. I think that's really cool. I talk about taking a software solution and building a multi-use application for it. You're taking, we've now identified quite a few problems that you're solving, right? We've got an onboarding problem, which is the number one cause of turnover, as you identified, but I think
Yes.
we've heard that from other places as well. And it makes perfect sense, right? You start people off on the right foot, you give them that confidence early on, you build a better culture of knowledge and understanding, and they're more willing to stick around. Not only that, but you're not putting pressure on their relationships with their coworkers. They have a way to
Yes.
reinforce
Yes.
that along the way. Then number two is you're building this great reinforcement of best practices, because now they have a knowledge warehouse of
Yeah.
where they can go whenever they've got a question, whenever they're confused, or as a leader, I can do the testing and the retesting and the pre-testing to help them identify where knowledge gaps are, where people have slipped, and then reinforce with training. And then number three, you have this, I have new ideas. How do I implement them before they get
So
lost
cool.
in the shuffle of the day-to-day? Now you build that into the standard operating procedure process, that SOP, and now you can implement new ideas and validate that they've been implemented effectively. I think the three of those things probably solve almost every problem that a dental practice has right now. So I think it's great that you guys have that.
Nice,
At
Bentley.
least some of the ones that are causing a lot of this chaos that's in there, right? So as I'm talking about this with some of the dentists again, I would throw this at them and I would say, hey, like, isn't this exciting talking about standard operating procedures? And I would say it like really excitedly, and they'd be like, no, this is
Not
not
really.
fun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I said,
Yeah.
so stop talking about it. You know, use my dental SOP so people can just use it as a tool, so you don't have to talk about all the problems with your SOPs
Yeah.
or how we're in the process of building these. So
Yeah. No, this is awesome for all of our practices listening. Bentley and I've realized that, most practices that are successful have some type of operating system and documentation for processes, and even with, in regards to, what we do at BoomCloud is create and help you grow membership programs. The practices that are using systems like this, within their organization are growing the fastest because it's clear as day on how to do how to grow a membership program, and every one of their team members are reading the standard operating procedures, and it's easy to train. So I love this. Like I said earlier, we have a system like this here at BoomCloud. I like the assessment aspect of what you said. So I'm going to go ask my brother, who's our chief operating officer, and see if there's something like that within ours, because I think that's awesome. So for those of our listeners listening, where can they find Dental SOP? What do you guys have? Freebies on your website, or webinars, or education? Like, what do you got for everybody?
Let me share my screen just briefly. Can you see this?
Yeah, we can see it.
So you can schedule a demo. It takes about 8 minutes to go through a demo.
Nice.
If you're looking at this, you can take a picture of the QR code. You're going to send anything to Joe at My Dental SOP. You guys saw Joe at the Dental Success
Yeah, what's
Summit
up, Joe?
Exactly. And anybody listening to this podcast, if you talk to us by the end of May, and I don't know exactly when this is going to air, but by the end of May, and we have to work it out depending on when it airs, we're going to give 75% off of the setup fee. So all of that content that dental practices, are trying to build is already in here. So it's almost a no-brainer if you haven't already built out your own. But even if you have, the design of the system, it's gonna be life-changing for dental practices, because things are just going to run so much more smoothly.
Yeah, love it. So go to mydentalsop.com. For those of you that are just listening to the podcast and not watching the video, we'll have the URLs in our show notes, so you can just click and go to this link that Tom is sharing with us. Tom, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us on the show today, and talking about My Dental SOP. I think this is a valuable episode for a lot of our practices. And if you don't have standard operating procedures documented, let's get started now. It sounds really easy with what Tom has to offer. So there you go.
Hey, thank you very much. Hanging out with you guys at the conferences, it's almost like a second family, because we're all over the country, the road warriors.
Yes.
And it's always been fun. Again, we've been following each other for a long time.
Yeah.
Love what you're doing. Always have. Really excited to see where we're all going to go next.
Awesome, Tom. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Tom. This is a pleasure.